So
Thank you. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining me this morning. Hope you're all surviving the heat wave. It's been pretty brutal. Although I guess we can be glad we don't live in Arizona, right?
yeah, looks like today's the worst of it, and then we start going back down. So
Yeah, that's good. That's very
yeah.
good. Okay. Well, let me pull up my presentation. Can uh
Well, welcome everybody. I see a couple more people hopping on. We've got Wendy doing a training for us today. Our own Wendy Matthews is going to go over the transfer disclosure statement and show us the ins and outs of the information that we find on there and how we can best help our clients navigate the form.
yeah,
So, Wendy, take it away.
we get away. Okay. Well, good morning again, everybody. Thanks for being here. The transfer disclosure statement, I think everybody on this call knows, is a required disclosure, but we're going to just go over that particular form today. There's another one, the SPQ, that I will go over at a later point, but this one, I just wanted to make sure I gave it enough time and emphasis and allow enough time for questions in case anybody had any. And hopefully, since if you've done a transaction, you already know the importance of this document, but maybe I'll be able to share some new information that you weren't quite aware of. Let me share my screen. Yeah, be well. There you go. Okay, so what you need to know about the transfer disclosure statement. First of all, it is a document that informs the buyer of everything that is going on with this house. So just be aware that it is one of those things where you're going to have to kind of walk your clients through, if they haven't done this already, some of the detail of the form. It is something that is not easy for a seller to fill out because they want to only show the good side of their house. But it's very important that they be very honest. They are the only ones that have lived in the house. So it's important that they just be as honest as possible. Not every seller, though, has lived in the house. So most of my transactions are with people that are the actual sellers and they've been living in the house for a while. But sometimes there's been an investor, maybe it's a rental, they've never lived in it, maybe it's an inheritance type of item. So there are times when a transfer disclosure statement is not always going to be appropriate, in which case, so some of those examples I just gave you, people have never lived in the house. They inherited from an uncle or a parent or something like that. So if they haven't lived in it, they will want to use something called an exempt seller disclosure. It's a zip form. But no matter what, somebody is going to have to disclose whatever they know about the property. It's just a requirement for the buyer to know what is the condition of the property. What am I buying here? I mean, it looks beautiful and the pictures on the MLS look great and I've walked through it and I've made an offer and it looks really cool, but every home is going to have extra revelations that it is up to the seller to disclose. So a TDS is a document from the seller to the buyer. It is not from us as an agent. It should not be filled out by us. In fact, it's preferred that the seller themselves handwrite the notes and the responses to the questions in the form, because this is their way of saying, here's my property, here's what I know, I've been here for umpteen years, and it's everything that I know. So we want to encourage sellers to be as honest as possible about everything, even though they say, oh, I don't know, there's a cracked window back there, I really don't want to disclose that. disclose it. I tell my clients it's going to be discovered eventually, especially when an inspection, inspector comes through and identifies lots of things that you wish they would never notice, but that's their job, is to really nitpick and find everything that they can see about the house. So it will be discovered eventually. It's better for the sellers to just be honest, rather than being found to hide anything. So TDS, I'm going to move to the next slide. That's because every home has a history, right? I mean, even homes that are brand new or newly built, there's still going to be some history there once the current seller has occupied that home. So stuff happens, like I said, storms, accidents, sprinklers. Well, that's sort of the bane of my existence. Our sprinklers are always having problems, probably some of you too. And faulty equipment. I mean, sometimes you've got a double oven, but only one of them works. So it's okay to just say double oven is there, but only one works. At some point, there will probably be a request for repairs, at which point you can negotiate on whether or not the new buyer is willing to accept that, or they want you to fix it, or you offer a credit and then they can have it fixed. It's all depending on what they're going to be doing with the home. Also, be aware that if a home is sold in less than 3 years of being purchased, the disclosures from that seller's purchase could be requested from the new buyers. So there's always a history. And so you want to keep your paperwork, you want to have everything very nice and clean if somebody asks. And if your clients are filling out the TDS and they have those previous TDSs from when they bought the house, then you want to remind them that if there is a major thing that was disclosed when they bought the house, you want to make sure that that's included in their disclosures. So that's just kind of a way to say, but we bought the house anyway, and it hasn't really been a problem for us, but still, it's a disclosure. The buyer has every right to know what they're buying. Something else to keep in mind is that insurance claims for any damage that might have occurred on the property are easily discovered. There's something called the American Land Title Association. You've probably heard of ALTA. This is an organization that shares information on all major insurance claims with its members, and the members are pretty much every insurance company. So if there was, I'll give you an example. I had a client who had a laundry room leak. Her brother came in to do some minor repairs in the house and threw a towel in the utility room sink and turned on the water, washed his hands, and then thought he turned the water off completely, but it was dripping just a little. Then he leaves, and my client was actually out of town as well. So he leaves and the water continues to drip. And then that towel plugged up the drain, and then the utility sink continued to fill and unfortunately overflowed into the laundry room, which then overflowed into the hallway, all the way down to the kitchen on this beautiful wood floor. And so when my client came home and discovered it, I mean, she came in and was up to her ankles in some areas. And she, of course, had to have major work done. And it was covered by insurance, and she had licensed contractors that did the work. But I encouraged her and I said, you have to disclose that you had a major leak. You cannot, I think the total cost was something like $60,000, mostly because in order to replace the wood, they had to basically remove almost all of the wood flooring in the house because it wasn't going to match up with the part that had been damaged. So it was huge. It was a big leak. But again, that's the sort of thing that gets captured by Alta. And if we had not included that in the disclosure, any appraiser or lender would be looking for previous claims like that and would just absolutely nail you for, well, why didn't you disclose this? That was huge. What are you hiding? If you're hiding that, what else are you hiding? So it's always better just to be honest and say, yep, this happened, but it's repaired. We had all of the forms signed by the contractors and the sign off from the inspector saying, yes, everything is perfect and was beautiful. And well, actually, it was even more beautiful than before because now they had all new flooring and drywall and things like that. So, and new paint. So it was actually in better shape than it was before the damage. But that's the whole point of the insurance claims. You can't hide them. You cannot hide them. Somebody will disclose it and it'll be found. So it's better just to be above board, disclose everything the seller knows. That way they don't come back to you a year later and say, oh, we found the water damage that was hidden by, I don't know, a dresser drawer that was, hiding the water damage. What, why wasn't that disclosed? And so then it can become very expensive for the previous seller to make up the difference. You just have to be right up front. Better to be that way than not. And as I've said, every home has something that's gone wrong. I don't know if anybody is out there that has had a perfect home and had never had anything go wrong, but it's very rare. So the important part is just get it out there. It's done. You've disclosed everything. Nobody can fault you for trying to hide anything. All right, I'm going to move to. Okay. I'm going to go over to the actual form. There we go. Oops. Okay, so this is the transfer disclosure statement. I'm actually using a partially filled in statement from a client that I'm working with right now, but this is just going to be, it says it's a TDS required for all units. So this is a single family home. You have
Hey,
the
we
address.
can't see it. We can't see it, Wendy.
Oh, you can't. Okay, so thank you for telling me. Let's see what's going on here. It says I'm screen sharing. But you can't.
We still see your slide presentation.
Okay, that's a good point. So my screen says you are screen sharing, so I don't know what's missing here.
I think when you click on screen share, you can select which window to share. Might be it.
Let's see. You are using enhanced encryption. Screen share. Oh, wait, there's a little tiny arrow. Let's see. Oh, well, it's not letting me bring up this form.
Do you have the form open in like a tab at the top next to your slide presentation?
It was on the bottom next to my slide presentation.
Okay.
Screen sharing. Well, let's see what I'm gonna do here.
It might work if you stop the screen share and then restart it and click on that document.
Okay, I'll give that a try.
And then like reshare using that document instead of your slide presentation. Maybe it just kind of got stuck there.
Yeah. Okay. How's that?
We see
Yep, we
it.
got it now.
Okay, thank you. And thank you. That sounded like Nathan. I can't see everybody on my screen, but thank you for letting me know. So anyway, you've probably all seen this form anyway, real estate transfer disclosure statement. It's dated the date of the transaction when the offer was accepted. There are no substituted disclosures for this transfer. So we're just using this transfer disclosure statement. So substitute would be that exempt seller disclosure. So if we move down here, so the seller's information, it's up to them to, first of all, indicate, yes, they are occupying the property. And then to identify all of the items that are in the property, all of the appliances, smoke detectors, the AC, sprinklers, whether or not you're on public sewer or if you're on septic. If you've got a garage, is it attached or not attached? Is there a pool, spa? Is the water supply from the public supply or is it on a well? Same thing with gas, window screens, window security bars, if there are any, and do they have the quick release mechanism, which is a requirement. And then there's a separate area here that is more specific about exhaust fans. What kind of wiring does it have? How many fireplaces do you have? Is there a gas starter in the fireplace? What kind of roof do you have? How old is it? And then to the best of your knowledge, are all of these in operating condition? So hopefully the answer is yes, but there may be some that, might have a hiccup or people have just learned to do without it, in which case, anytime you indicate a yes answer or you check something that needs further discussion, you need an explanation for what's happening. So I used an example earlier about how there's a double oven, but only one of them works. So then that would just be entered in there. So then we go to page 2. And it says, are you, the seller, aware of any significant defects or malfunctions in the following? So that would be interior walls. Where's my cursor? Lost my cursor. There we go. Interior walls, ceilings, floors, exterior walls, insulation, roofs, windows, doors, foundation, etc. You can read all this yourself. But if you're aware of any defects or malfunctions, then you need to have them handwrite the description in here. Like maybe roof leak caused by winter rains or something like that. If there is a roof leak, you want to be able to say something like contractor scheduled to fix repairs in the next 2 weeks or something like that. So just make sure that people know that if some of those things are on your to-do list, that you've already gotten on it. Things like sidewalks, walls, and fences. I mean, some fences are not in great shape and people just learn to live with them. The gate, they know drags, but that's okay with them. They just lift it up and close it themselves. But still, you need to disclose all that so that people know what condition is that the house has been in and basically what you've been living with. So then we go to, are you aware of any of the following? So this kind of gets more into the, like if there's been any drug manufacturing going on, based on the age of the house. Is there lead-based paint? Have you noticed any mold? A lot of people don't even know mold when they say it. They just see little black freckles on a wall and they just think, oh, black freckles. So anytime there is a yes answer over here, you're going to have something down below that explains what the yes answer is. So, and I usually have my clients say, for example, find one here. Oh, room additions, structural modifications, or other alterations made without necessary permits. That's number 4. So I had a client who did extend the dining room and used his brother, who was a contractor, but it was not permitted. So I said, okay, for item 4, you're just going to drop down here, put say item 4, dining room area expanded using family member who is a contractor, but no permits pulled. So again, it's just divulging the information so that there's no question about, well, why is this dining room so much bigger than the one down the street in the same model? Let's see, another example would be, oh, flooding, drainage, or grading problems. So I personally did not have this experience, but I did hear about a home down in Chula Vista, I think it was, where they had graded the back of the house, or the yard in the back of the house, because they wanted more flat area. And then there was a slope toward the back. Unfortunately, there was no earth compacting of that slope. And they had built I'll call it an ADU, but it was really just more almost like a fancy she shed or tool shed or something like that. But it was sitting on the back of the property. These people sold the home, did not mention that they had that area graded. And then the next year they had heavy rains, and all of that loose earth just started to erode, and that she shed just dropped right down that slope. Well, because the sellers did not disclose that, it was their responsibility to pay for that damage and reconstruct and pay for the work that should have been done in the first place, which was getting everything compacted nice and firm and approved so that you could build a structure on top of it. So that's one example. The one that my clients always ask me about is like, what do you mean neighborhood noise problems or other nuisances? I've got a neighbor that likes to play loud music late at night and it drives us all nuts, and there's nothing we can do about it. We've asked him and he just says, it's my right. So I think that's got to be disclosed. I would just say down at the bottom, some loud noise or parties from neighbor, I don't know, three doors down or something like that, or neighbor behind me, or just say occasional noise nuisance from that sort of thing. But it's got to be disclosed, because if that neighbor cranks up the stereo, after the new owners move in and there's nothing in there about noise bothering them, then it's going to come back. I'm going to point out CC&Rs. So those of you who are not familiar, that stands for conditions, covenants, and restrictions, or other deed restrictions or obligations. And invariably, my clients rarely know what CC&Rs are. So I'll explain it just the way I just did to you. They are conditions that are attached to the deed, but I always encourage them to answer CHOA docs, because those kind of references are going to be noted in any of the HOA minutes, or references about how properties have been held and what kind of title they have and things like that. So CC&Rs and other deed restrictions is sometimes one that gets a question mark from my clients. HOA association, yes. Any common areas such as pools, tennis courts, walkways, or other areas co-owned in an undivided interest with others. So where I live, or I used to live, there was an HOA, and of course there was local, what we call common area maintenance. So it's just the landscaping. They take care of that. We didn't have a community pool. We didn't have a clubhouse. We didn't have anything, but there is a walking trail that is maintained by the HOA. So that needs to be noted. And I'll have to check with our TCs, but a TC that I used in the past told me that even a common area mailbox kiosk needs to be noted, because it is one of those things that needs to be commonly maintained. It's not even maintained by the post office, but if there's a lock that won't open up, somebody in that neighborhood, particularly the lockbox or the mailbox owner for that particular address, needs to make sure that it gets fixed and that they can access their mail. All right, so notices of abatement or citations against the property, these are usually city generated. So if there is anything, again, I would just say see HOA docs, because they would have more detailed information. If for some reason you were aware of it, though, as the seller, or not you, the seller, that would have to be disclosed by them, that they were aware that there was an abatement or easement access. For example, one of the homes I sold in the same neighborhood I was just referencing had an easement on it that allowed the utility people to come on the property because it was right next to a walking trail, and the easement allowed the utility company to come and check on the lighting pole that was at the very corner of the lot. And so there's just notifications that people want to be aware of. Actually, in this case, the seller was not even aware that that was an easement that was allowed on their property, because they said, no, I own 100% of this property. And then we showed them that the city says, there is an easement. They may not have used it so far, but they do have the right to come on your property. And there's always a notification process, but it is something that people need to be aware of. Other things are like if your home were on a corner where there was landscaping that the HOA takes care of, then you just need to say, see HOA docs. Landscapers, take care of the corner shrubs and flowers, things like that. All right. So again, you reference the number here, and then just put have your sellers put their notations down here on the bottom. And then they're going to sign it saying that as far as they're aware, they have the operable smoke detectors and that are required, and for every home actually, and that they have they are in compliance by having the water heater tanks braced and anchored. So most of you probably already know that a properly strapped water heater and the smoke detectors are mandatory. The water heater ideally is sitting up on a raised platform, so that if it does have a leak, it isn't leaking directly onto the floor. In fact, ideally it is sitting in a pan, but not all homes are like that. Sometimes water heaters are sitting directly on the floor, the concrete floor, or they don't have a pan underneath it. It's preferred, but if it wasn't built that way, you don't have to put it back that way. It's not like, well, it's code now, but as I think we all know, we don't have to sell the property up to code, and the seller does not have to bring everything up to code. They just have to disclose what they know. All right, so there's that. And then, so the TDS and the seller property questionnaire, which is going to be training material at a later date, are all due to the buyer within 7 days of an offer being accepted. But that means that our AVIDs are also due at that point, because this TDS document shows that the agent has done their inspection. So it's always good to be able to put a check right there, have your sellers acknowledge whatever you discovered as a result of your own inspection. I think, we're not inspectors. This is just a visual inspection. So we might notice that the windows are fogged, or the faucet, that seems to be loose, or what have you, but we don't climb up on ladders. We don't go into the attic. We don't lift even carpet. There's one house that I went to once with an inspector. This place was so squeaky clean. I had a horrible time trying to find the tiniest little thing that could be considered a flaw or something. Just, it was just painted. They took immaculate care of this thing. But I was advised by my broker at the time that if there were any area rugs and you could not see under the area rug, then at least you can say unable to see underneath the area rug if there was any flooring damage. So the whole point of a visual inspection is that, we want to be able to say that we were in the house, we noticed things that were noticeable to the normal person. But again, we're not inspectors. We don't turn on washers and dishwashers and microwaves and things like that. We just make a visual inspection. But that's going to be due within the first 7 days. So our broker Jason is very, very adamant that he wants to see our AVIDs done in a timely fashion, because that is the one document that is our saving grace. Especially if the other agent has just done a very cursory review and usually might say comments like nothing noted, kitchen, nothing noted, living room, nothing noted. So if ours at least shows that we made some observations, then we are in a better legal standing to help support our seller if there's any action that comes back from that. Okay, so we're going to want to get our AVID done. And then if there's another agent involved, then that's for this part here, but this is going to be your section to acknowledge and say, see attached visual inspection, even. And then you have the buyers and the sellers. So the sellers are going to sign this before you give it to the buyers, but it's basically their acknowledgement of this is everything we know about the house. We've disclosed the history for as long as we've been here, and that's our total recollection of everything that you could possibly want to know about this house. Let's see. So something I wanted to mention to you, there's also the question of, did somebody die in the house? And that diagnosis, no, not the diagnosis, but the reason for the cause of death is of nobody's business. Usually it's just died of natural causes within the last 3 years. And the one thing that we cannot disclose, of course, is if the death was due to AIDS. That is specifically called out as something that we cannot identify. We just say, there was a death in the house within the last 3 years, period, end of discussion. That's all I can disclose at this point. All right, so then everybody signs and we're all done with our form. The SPQ is more detail that I'll go into at another time, but this is kind of like, this is the condition of the house. This is what we're aware of, and we're disclosing everything. We have nothing to hide. I will say that sometimes I know of some agents who say, well, so your microwave doesn't work. That's okay. We're going to get a homeowner's warranty for this, and it covers all the appliances for a year after after the close of the sale. Well, it doesn't apply if it's in the inspector's report. If the inspector says, "Whoop, this microwave does not work," or, does not heat water, or what have you, then that's already been disclosed. So you cannot use that home warranty insurance plan to pay for that sort of stuff. I always thought that was something that seemed obvious, but I actually have heard agents say, "Don't worry, once we get the homeowner's warranty, it'll be covered for at least a year, so you're all good." But nope, you're not. If it's been disclosed and it's been reported in a inspector's report, then it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to use that as an insurance claim. All right, so that is that. So I'm gonna got one more slide here. I'm gonna go back to, let me know if you can see this. Can you see my slides?
We still see the form that you had brought up.
Oh, okay, all right, I'm gonna have to go stop share. Start all
Yeah,
over
try the
again.
same thing we did last time. That seemed to work.
It did, yes. All right, so here. Screen share. All right.
We got it.
Yay. Okay. So for disclosures, and there are other forms, but we're just talking about TDS today. As I've mentioned, they must be provided to the buyer within 7 days of acceptance of an offer. The other forms are the SBQ. Again, that is just more detail about the property, and that requires, in my opinion, a lot more discussion. So I opted to not have this be both of those type of disclosures in one training. So the SBQ, and then the ABID, of course. Then there's also natural hazard disclosures that also comes and needs to be provided to the buyer within 7 days of offer accepted. And typically the TCs will order these because it's not something that we can order. They will make it available, and they will make sure that all the signatures get included. Yeah, so yeah, that SPQ is going to just be more detail of what they call material facts. Material facts meaning something that somebody would want to know. And it is material to my decision to move forward with this transaction, and I do want to continue to buy the house. So if kind of going back to my original, one of my first slides, if there is a situation where it's an inheritance, or it's a landlord or somebody that has never lived in the house, they can choose to do that exempt seller disclosure, because, let's face it, they were never living in the house. They have no idea what the condition is. So, but they're going to provide as much as they can with that exempt seller disclosure form. But if they use that form, the exempt seller disclosure form, then no seller property questionnaire is required, because again, that's just more detail from a TDS. But since they weren't even able to fill out a TDS, they're safe with their exempt seller disclosure. So that's what I know about TDS. Does anybody have any questions or any comments or any experiences they want to share? I'm going to
Wendy,
share.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
So this all has to be disclosed after you accept an offer, right? When you send the seller disclosures.
Yes.
Before that, if there's something with the home, do you have to tell the buyers or the potential?
No, unless it's something obvious, like if there's a I'm just gonna say like a big crack in the concrete out on the patio, they might ask, you know, wow, what caused that? You know, if you don't know, or if you can just say, well, it's now 25 years old and, you know, that's all we know about it. But no, once you really need to be in contract in order to be further disclosing more details that will help the buyer understand what it is that they're buying.
What do you suggest? Because so for this home, for instance, the AC unit, it needs to be replaced completely. So what do you suggest we kind of tell the buyers before in order to avoid like a cancellation of escrow, or to kind of wait and kind of negotiate that while we're in escrow?
Well, if you've discussed it with your clients and if they have already said, yeah, we're gonna put a new one in before this thing closes, because first of all, look how hot it is right now. It's hot for the sellers to live in their house. So if they've already shared with you that they're going to be putting in a new AC,
The
then,
seller's not gonna, they've already put too much work. They rather do credits.
oh, okay. Well, then I wouldn't say anything. If someone gets into contract and then says, yeah, but oh, we just found out through the inspection that the AC doesn't work. Oh, it doesn't? Oh, it doesn't? Then you can say, well, you know, then let's just talk about, you know, maybe a possible credit to make that more acceptable for you.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. I would try to get them as close to the finish line before disclosing anything that you don't have to disclose.
Okay.
Because, you know, they're going to get flooded with this kind of information. It's a lot.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I was going to share with you a client I had who, in my opinion, went way overboard with his concern that there might be a leak in a window in the dining room, to the point, even though there was no water damage along the windowsill, he decided on his own to basically cut out a whole section of drywall beneath that window so that he could see, oh, okay, so there's no water damage inside. I just said, you know, you really didn't need to do that, because unless there's an inspector that is pointing this stuff out. Well, anyway, he just went overboard, because, you know, he had to hire somebody to come in and put in new drywall and paint and match the colors and stuff like that. So he incurred a lot more expense than was necessary, because the seller did talk to the drywall guy, and he goes, the drywall guy said, well, why did you even do this? He goes, well, I just want to make sure that there was no water damage. Wow. Okay. Well, I can assure you there's no water damage.
Your buyer did this during escrow?
No, they did it before we went on the market. He was just like so overly concerned. He wanted to.
Oh, you mean the seller? The seller did.
Oh,
it.
did I say buyer?
Well, I thought you did. I maybe I misunderstood.
Oh, I might
you.
have.
Yeah,
I might have.
yeah, okay.
No, my mistake. No, this seller did it, and he just wanted to get into contract as fast as possible and have everything go lickety split, no problems. And he thought he was getting ahead of a problem that wasn't a problem. So, you know, yeah.
I thought, I was thinking buyer, because I was like, oh, I got one for you, because I had a buyer in Menifee that called me. We were in escrow. It was a vacant home. And he says, hey, Gary, I think we have a problem. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, I'm at the house now. And I'm like, how'd you get in? And it was a combo, and he probably looked over my shoulder, is my guess. And he was ripping the carpet up. And as he was pulling the baseboards off, there was like some wood damage or something like that. And I was like, you can't do that. And he was a, ex-retired Marine guy. And he just wouldn't listen, and nice guy, but he was just like, you need to leave now. And he's like, I go, what else did you do? He's like, you don't want to know. And I go, what did you do? And he goes, you don't want to know. And I'm like,
oh dear.
He basically ripped up the carpet was trash and stuff anyways. And we were close to closing, but it was like, he knew he wasn't supposed to do that. That was crazy. I got me nervous, but it turned out. But yeah, that's
Oh.
what I thought you were saying. I might have misunderstood, but I thought you were saying the buyer did that. And I was like, oh yeah, so somebody else did it too. Yeah, during escrow.
If I did, my mistake, but no, this was actually the seller. He was so concerned that he wanted this transaction to close as fast as possible and to have basically the house be impeccable in the inspection. And I already told him, I said, it's their job to find every little
Right.
nitpicking thing.
Yeah.
That's what they do. That's how they make their living. It doesn't mean you have to fix it. You can negotiate that, or you can just say, nope, that's just the way this house is. It's, 20 years old and
Take it or leave it. It's as
Yeah.
is. That's all
Yeah.
homes are as is. So yeah.
oh, for sure.
Oh, good.
All right. Any other questions? Anybody, other stories anybody wants to share? No? Okay. All right. Well, thanks for listening. I hope you found this helpful. Jennifer, where do we post this presentation for anybody?
This will be posted in the YouTube videos channel on Slack. So
okay.
Louis gets these videos and then he posts them. It'll probably be a day or two before it gets in there. And thank you so much, Wendy, for all this great information. This was amazing.
My pleasure. All right. Good to talk with
Thank
you
you.
and nice to see everybody. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right,
Bye.
everybody have a good day.
You too.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.